What is the importance of proper business habits in your private clinic?
Is general practice in Australia under attack? There are a few people who think so. Welcome to the podcast by Scale My Clinic, founded by Doctors Todd Cameron and Sachin Patel, who are on a mission to help every general practice owner achieve his or her dream. The Scale My Clinic podcast is designed to leave listeners with insights and understanding gained by real-lived experience that will help general practice owners create impact, get their time back, and enjoy increased revenue. Join Todd and Sachin every week as they share their stories on the Scale My Clinic podcast.
Now, Sachin, this is an important question and one that we get asked a lot at Scale My Clinic. You are feeling a little bit seedier than usual on a Monday morning. Do you want to tell us exactly what's going on there?
Morning, Todd. Interesting how you said seedier than usual on a Monday morning. I'm normally quite sprightly on a Monday. Yeah, definitely. I had my second vaccination for COVID, of course, and a bit feverish and a bit achy and sore today. So get the violin out. But there's an interesting thing that I noticed when I went for this vaccination. I went to one of the public hubs where I had my first vaccine, and it just spelled out to me how the public sector has really disproportionate funding and expectations at a lower level than private clinics. The advantages they have over privately held business are just huge. So at this site, they told me the best they've done is 980 vaccinations over 12 hours, which is a good number, right? Until you look at how many people were there. So they had between 75 and 100 people there. I stopped counting at
staff. These are all wow.
Staff. Not patients wanting to be vaccinated. This is staff. Wow. And I stopped counting at 75. So I'm tipping that it's closer to 100. And we know with our members in Project X that we've worked with around the vaccination process, people are having the same levels of output for probably a tenth of the resource, somewhere between a tenth and an eighth of the resource. And it just was a stark reminder how public services are so inefficiently run compared to privately held clinics and businesses. And so sustainability and getting really good habits in our businesses is essential, because our businesses, privately held clinics, are the foundation, the bedrock of a solid health system. And we know in Australia that over the last, decade, that the funding and the support for privately held clinics has been gradually eroded, whereas it feels like when you're sitting there and watching, it's a culture of waste in the public sector, and the differences are quite stark at how private businesses had to adapt and modify itself. And of course, we should lobby, and we want to lobby, but the reality is help hasn't been coming for privately held clinics, and it's probably not coming. And so we need to help ourselves. We really need to be helping ourselves.
I think you're right. The problem is that the public sector is already a large consumer of the tax budget for health dollars. And the data shows that's getting bigger. COVID will just have accelerated that. They are empire building in a great way in hospitals. We use hospitals at a much greater rate than most other countries. And this sort of stuff, where if we look at the example of delivering the vaccines through general practice, on average it's $30 a shot. I mean, with 10 times the staffing, it's got to be costing between $150 and $250 per jab in that sort of a setting. That could not viably run on the same payment model as goes to privately held practices. It's just outrageous. And this is just the examples that you see everywhere in healthcare. And all COVID has done is accelerated this trend towards more funding going towards mostly state bodies and away from privately held practice. As you say, I think it's a really big issue that, to be blunt, if we sit around and we're passive, we're in a lot of trouble. And bleating and complaining, yep, okay, it might feel good. But as you say, what it does is it means that you're left with a strategy of hope. And, we know that hope is not a plan, right? So tell us a bit about, Sachin, what it was for you that actually got you into coaching privately held practices and the rationale for that.
Yeah. So I think, having gone through the ownership journey from, greenfield all the way through to exit, you take a lot of punches along the way, right? And the reality is you just get better at taking punches as you go on your business journey. You might move from welterweight to then heavyweight, so that you're a bit bigger and stronger, and then the punches are bigger and stronger. That's the reality of business and any endeavor where you're trying to improve yourself. The quality of the problems you face change and grow and improve. For me, it was, I like numbers, as you know, Todd. So for me, early on in the piece, it was impacting a community, the community, and the my clinic and clinics supported, and then before that, even, it was patients, right? So one doctor to 1,000 patients. Then it was clinic, one clinic to 5, 10, 20,000 patients. Then it's that equation, you're always looking to multiply. Then it was, well, how do you help 100,000 or 1,000,000 people? And the reality is, to touch and assist and help and impact that many people, to help 1,000,000 patients, you need to have an influence on somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 GPs. And the best way I could fathom to do that, and match that with something that I deeply love, is around the business aspect. Because the reality is, there's CPD, we've got CPD coming out of our ears, but nowhere is there business education. Is there business?
Did you say ear or rear?
I'll let you interpret it how you would
just
like.
checking. Okay.
The reality is that there's CPD everywhere, but there's no reliable expertise, coaching and education around business, apart from people who often call themselves experts but have no lived experience. We have this old, in medicine, we have see one, do one, teach one, right? Often in, with many of the experts around our industry, it's see one, teach one. And sometimes it's just teach one without see one or do one. And I think, the problems, having spoken to many owners over, wide geography and wide circumstances, the problems are very similar. Whether it's around where the income comes from, how we manage risk, how we build systems and processes to deliver in a smooth and effective manner, how we upgrade ourselves as leaders to create a culture that people want to be part of, how we impact our communities, how we develop our people, whether it's about recruiting, which is a pain point at the moment. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, in another episode. How do we keep the right people, and how do we let go of the people that aren't maybe right for us and feel okay about that? And how do we bill, charge, price our services appropriately, so that we're well rewarded and resourced to do more of the work. And I think the other important aspect is that we do good work, and many of you scalers listening to this, you do good work. Well, once you do good work, there's a moral obligation and a duty for you and all of us to go and do more of it to impact more people. It's selfish not to. And so for me, it was to help people who are doing good work amplify their reach, their impact, and thereby the secondary to that is for me and now us, Todd, to impact at least those million people, and then we can work on the 10 million.
It sounds like a plan that I'd like to be a part of. You and I have chatted a bit about how we came to be serving, the community in this particular way. In my case, it was growing up in a household with a father that was an insurance salesperson, and he used to leave a whole bunch of books laying around. Unfortunately, Dad died when I was 14. He was 42 at the time, so there weren't any more books coming after I was 14. But there were enough books in the household, that were Zig Ziglar. Brian Tracy. I'm trying to think the other ones around that era. Lots of books anyway that I just read because I enjoyed studying. If you're anything else and you're a doctor, then you've been a student the vast majority of your life. So you're just used to picking stuff up and reading it, and that's what I did. And I never really realised the impact that would have on me until I was in the environment and the opportunity presented itself to own a practice. And then, like you, I'm of the belief that if you're going to get good at something, you need to do it again and again and again. And that was the journey that I began on in owning practices. At that point in time, that was modern medical. And I know your background was growing up literally in a shop, Sachin. So share a bit about that. You came to be more business minded.
When I was 7, we moved to a small town in the east of England. Moved from London. We were the only brown people there. My parents bought a newsagent. We're only going for 2 years. Shortcut to the end, they sold 30 years later. But we're only going for 2 years. And it was a pretty tough place. It was a different time then, and the levels of racism and hatred were pretty significant, and ignorance. But along that way, from the age of 11, we had the shop. We had the shop from the age of 7, but from the age of 11, I was helping out there. My parents worked 7 days a week. There was 1 day off a year, which was Christmas Day. The only day without a newspaper was Christmas Day. And from the age of 11, I was selling cigarettes and alcohol, and creating a market for myself. So for
vertical integration, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So 14 years later, when I qualified, it was time to tell people to stop drinking and stop smoking. So that's where my love of marketing comes. You've got to create your market. But I think in that time we had tough times, and you run business by default. You're just operating on autopilot, especially when you're working in it, doing the technical work. The newsagent, in their case, it was working in the shop, in a practice. There's a lot of parallels there. You're part of a community. You're often on the tools, and really the business operation becomes an afterthought, because whoever's on the tools is often so busy doing the work that keeping the business operating is the secondary thing.
I think one other thing that it's easy for, and I'm going to say academics. Doctors are mostly going to be more academic, and not all privately held practices are owned by doctors, but most are. It can be easy to think as an academic you're not involved in sales, but actually I would say that that's completely untrue. Sales experience is critical for the work that we do in healthcare, because you're a purveyor of ideas. You need to usually get people to change habits and start influencing exactly how they see the world and what is within their scope of ability to control. So, if you can't influence people, you're a pretty ineffective clinician as well. So this learning at the coalface of business and understanding what it is that helps people make a choice and make people commit to a course of action is really, really critical. And I think that's a really, really important part of growing up for you. And in my own experience, I always had work from when I was 12. I just always found something to do to go and find a way to earn money, whether it was grabbing a bucket and cleaning windows or cars in the area as far as I could walk with it. I always loved doing those things and finding out what it was that got people to say, yeah, okay, come back. We'd like you to come back and wash the windows or clean the cars next week. They're really important things as part of your development with normal sort of commercial mindset to the way that you approach the world, I think. Because as you said, it's about making a difference, right?
Absolutely. I think, the concept of adding value is, in a retail environment in particular, showed itself. But that is in any endeavor, any field, whether personally for me, whether I've done it when I was working in emergency or in general practice or behind the counter in the shop, I think, exceeding expectations is a really important behavior and value to hold. Just because someone comes in asking for X, we should always look at the opportunity. How can I help them more? How can I add more to that person's life? And in healthcare, we might do it with opportunistic health. In Macca's, you might do it with, would you like fries with that? But the reality is, it's about enhancing the person's experience in whichever way you can, and constantly looking to add value. I think I'll just go back to, you asked me a little while ago, why coaching? Right. And I think, there's a story that sits in my mind that really, I know why I started, but once since I have been, this is the story probably tells me why I am doing it. And Todd, you probably know who I'm talking about when I talk about this story, but two female owners that we work with who really were at a point in their ownership journey where they just weren't enjoying ownership. There were things were hard enough as owners, a bit harder still as women owners, faced with the challenges and discrimination and difficulties that women owners do suffer and women suffer in our society, and just not enjoying themselves at all. Fast forward 18 months, and with the right activities put into the right place, really just impressive turnaround, just in terms of doubling the consulting space available for them. Significant change in their rental situation, and I think when we did a back of the envelope, over 5 years, probably a net benefit of close to $2.8 million. And above all, aside from the financial benefit, I think there's a line that was said, which I think gave me goosebumps, and I know it gave you goosebumps, which is just really enjoying ownership again. And I think helping people understand what's possible for them, because our results, whatever we achieve, is limited by what we know to be possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the Henry Ford. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. I think expanding the possibility and understanding of what's possible for whether it's doctor owners or non-doctor owners, I think that is probably the reward, helping them understand what's possible and then helping them create that. That is fulfilling to a massive degree for me. Yeah.
I always used to think, as a practice owner, that it was a lot like running an event that happened to be a wedding. Right? There was like a special price for everything, and everybody always knew the answer to what it was because they just wanted to sell you their thing. So it was a little bit like being the GP with all the consultants looking after a single organ and believing that their organ was the one that really mattered the most, and all organs came secondary to this. And that's the problem with when you get people advising you as an owner is if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so we find this, Sachin, that there's people that have a ton of different things that they've taken on and tried, just because there's not a cohesive plan about how to look at what's right for you right now. I mean, how many people know a consultant that come on board and say, you know what, I can't help you now. You don't need this service right now. You're going to need it in a year or two. It just doesn't happen. And so a lot of people just get taken to the cleaners by kind of, serial monogamy with different experts that take them on a journey. And again, it's not the fault of the experts. They're usually well-intended, but they're relatively expensive services that are often misdirecting people at the time that they need to be getting a holistic view. That's the bit that I think is often missing in this, and it's improved. We aim to improve it and hold everybody accountable, including ourselves, in coaching this audience that's so important to us. And so we're going to wind this episode up now, Sachin, and give you a little bit of time to recover from your second jab. And the question for the audience is, what was most relevant for you today, for our listeners? And what one action will you take on the basis of what you've learned and heard in this episode? Do both Sachin and I a favour. Share this episode with a colleague. We want to make sure that we get to help as many owners as we can, and aspiring owners, of course, in there. If you'd like more info, jump over to our website, scalemyclinic.com, and you'll learn a bit more about what it is that we do, who we serve, and how we help people. Otherwise, go well, and thanks for your time today.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks for tuning into the Scale My Clinic podcast with Todd and Sachin and the team. For more information and to get the resources mentioned in this podcast, visit www.scalemyclinic.com.